Hello believers, and welcome to the show. This is a podcast where we speak to creative people about how their minds work and how the X-Files has probably rooted itself in there. I'm currently waiting outside a motel in the US. Which state, you might ask? Well, obviously I don't want to give away my exact location in case the syndicate are listening in, but suffice to say, it's humid and I think Donald Glover just walked past. Just want to say thank you again to everyone who's been with us on the first half of the season of Believe Me. Very much appreciate you tuning in and following us on the various social networks, emailing your thoughts and feedback, and listening to me chat in person about how much I enjoy doing this show, and in particular learning about the lives of the guests on the show and how they approach their various creative practices. Lots more to come in the second half of the season. We've got dancers, we've got novelists, filmmakers, musicians, artists, and yes, more comedians. So I hope you'll join us in a month or two when we return. Before that though, we're ending this first season with a goodie. I'll just precurse this intro by saying that for about, the last 30 years, I've had something of an obsession with severe weather, and in particular tornadoes. We don't tend to get too many of those in northeast Derbyshire in England, but they do in America big time, and I was lucky enough to travel over to the States some time back to live out that dream when I went storm chasing in the Midwest. Did I see any tornadoes? No, not really. Did it matter? Yes, it did actually. It was really annoying, but you know, they say never meet your heroes. I still had a great time seeing the Midwest countryside and meeting lots of fun characters along the way, and it continued to fuel my interest in meteorology even more. Which brings me on to today's guest. It's extreme weather historian Carly Anna Sisson. Carly is the creator of a much-loved YouTube channel dedicated to remembering weather events and the effects that they have on their communities. She also runs Two Storms, an apparel store which aims to bring awareness of storm anxiety and natural disaster-induced trauma, and a good chunk of the profits from that goes towards mental health and severe weather relief charities. Carly talks about tornadoes, naturally, growing up in the Bible Belt, where a fascination with extreme weather comes from, living in Atlanta, how storm chasing and storm monitoring has changed over the years, the film Twisters, though this chat was actually recorded at the beginning of the year and neither of us had seen the film yet, but spoiler, we have both seen it now and have both really enjoyed it. And of course, there's still time to talk about the X-Files, and in the show we talk about Season 2, Episode 12, Aubrey, in which Mulder and Scully believe that a serial killer from the 1940s has passed his genetic trait of violence onto his grandchild. As you'll be able to tell from this intro and my tone during the conversation, I was very excited to speak to Carly, and I recommend both her video essay work and Two Storms to anyone with even a passing interest in extreme weather, meteorology, or good quality merchandise. As always, if you like our show, please do leave me a message, subscribe, review, follow us on X and Instagram and YouTube. But in the meantime, in the words of Bill Paxton, tighten your seatbelt. Here's Carly.
I have been really loving the intro to this podcast, by the way, to start off, just letting you know. The intro and the other episodes I've been listening to just as I clean the house and stuff.
Right.
I love the intro. The music reminds me of this old PlayStation game that I used to play called Medieval.
Oh, right.
And it's very fantastical, and I think it was actually developed in the UK too, so it was really cool. But
wow, and what was that? That I imagine it's a kind of RPG sort of walking through like a Discworld type of thing, is it?
It's an older, grungy sort of early 2000s, PS1 game, and it's based on this old British knight who comes back from the dead. It's really cool. But it's very fantastical, and it gives me the same vibe of your intro music, which I really love and appreciate. So.
Oh, that's so kind of you. Yeah, I do struggle sometimes to think, because as you'll have gathered, I try and go somewhere that's adjacent to what we're talking about and what the guest's about, and I'm running out of places, to be honest. So maybe for this one I'll find a wind farm or something like that.
No, it's a perfect introductory little, I don't know, like a tunnel. It feels like you're going through a little tunnel into the space. So I really like it a lot.
Oh, great. Yeah, because I'm a big fan of David Cronenberg, and I always like when how David Cronenberg's films usually start with a kind of operatic intro. It's like a palette cleanser. It's sort of is it some curtains you're looking at? You don't really know what you're looking at, and then you hear that Howard Shore score, and you're entering into that mind frame. So I appreciate you. I appreciate that. Thank you. And yeah, what are you up to at the moment? Are you working on new videos? Are you working? What do you do of a day when you're not doing your videos?
I guess I should have answered the question first, but yeah. Well, I'm doing well, and I guess busy doing the videos is always pretty all consuming. And doing the small business stuff, there's always something to do, and I never feel like I fully have enough time to accomplish it. But I mean, this time of year, like the summer, really makes me come alive and feel very inspired. So just working on videos always, and that's pretty much it. I'm working on one right now, so
fantastic.
Hopefully it'll be out in the next 2 weeks, but it could take me another 5 months. I don't know.
Well, that's exciting, because you're from Tennessee, is that right, originally?
Yeah, I'm from Tennessee, like rural East Tennessee, just outside of the mountains, actually, which is, in retrospect, I guess you don't appreciate it when you're younger, but I moved to Atlanta some years ago, but now I can really appreciate how beautiful rural East Tennessee is in the mountains, and just so peaceful. I mean, especially compared to living in I say Atlanta's a bigger city, but truly the mountains out there are gorgeous and just so quiet and serene.
Yeah, what do I know about Atlanta? I've watched the show, the Donald Glover show, so that's...
Oh, he's brilliant. Yeah, he's very brilliant.
That's what I'm getting. And Taylor Perry, what's that guy called?
Yeah, Tyler Perry.
Yeah.
Already that's like 90% of it. I mean, people from Atlanta would hate me for saying that, but I love Atlanta. I love the opportunity and things that it's brought me. It is... I think I've come to the conclusion that it's just a little too chaotic for me. I don't know where you stand on how much you enjoy or don't enjoy being in a bigger city, or the feeling of chaos, but it's kind of overwhelming for me a little bit.
I'm originally from a place called Chesterfield, which is sort of middle of England, and it's a very small town. It's famed for its crooked church spire, which visitors from far and wide come to see this crooked church spire that came about when it's to do with rotting wood being used, but there's a whole fable of God and the devil having a fight, and the devil getting really angry, wrapping his tail around the church spire and it causing it to bow, and eventually the devil was vanquished by God on high. So we're all, that's what we tell the tourists anyway, but yeah.
That is so cool. I love that. That is fascinating. And I love historically rich places like that too. How cool is that?
A friend of mine did an embroidered version of the Crooked Church spire and handed it to me. And when she handed it to me, I thought she'd done me an embroidered version of a tornado, because it looked exactly like a funnel cloud. So I was so happy about that I went off, and I've now got that, and I'll show you this at the end of the car. I've now got that tattooed on my forearm. So people say, "Oh, is that because you're interested in storms?" I was like, "Well, partly, but also it connects to Chesterfield." But back to your original point was, I'm from a kind of small town, but I moved to London for a long time. yeah, it is overwhelming and expensive. So
Did you move back out of London? Sorry, you were probably about to finish that thought.
no, that's fine. Yes, we did. We moved back to Sheffield, which is near to Chesterfield, just up the road, and that's, what can I say about Sheffield? It used to have a steel industry of steel makers and a lot of mining places around there. But it's also very close to the Peak District National Park. It's a beautiful area, and it's famed for bands like Pulp and the Arctic Monkeys and things like that. Wow. So quite rich, but also that felt too small in a way. And everyone there's quite pleased with themselves. Everyone's like, when we said, "Oh, we're moving out of Sheffield," they were like, "Why are you moving out? Goodness me, you're moving out of Sheffield. Well, how dare you?" Taking it really personally. So then we moved to Edinburgh because we've got some Scottish connections, and it's kind of the halfway house, which is really nice because you've got the Gothic architecture and you've got the countryside. Yeah. And you're planning a holiday over here, is that right?
Yeah, well, it's quite the story. It's turned into maybe not, but my sister is still definitely going. Right. Whether I'm able to come out is to be determined, but she's definitely going out. She's got the travel bug, and I'm so excited for her. I think she just finished a trip in New Zealand, and Scotland was always kind of our dream trip together. So maybe she'll go and then have like the know where to go and not go, and then we can make a trip eventually together and avoid the not so great spots.
Yes. You can drive halfway across the country and get to Inverness, and then on the map it looks like if you want to get to the top of the country, it looks like there's only another little bit to drive, but it's actually the same again because you have to drive all the way around these curly roads and goodness me. So it's quite a trek. But yes, I hope you do make it because it's a beautiful place. Do you get back to Tennessee much then? Have you got folks still there?
Well, so my one sister still lives in Chattanooga, and then my family's so very spread apart now. I have my dad's in Montana. I have 3 sisters, so one's in Oregon, one's in New Zealand, and then one's in Tennessee. So quite scattered about we ended up being, but we try to get together every once in a while. I drive up to Tennessee a couple times a year for, Buc-ee's is a great road trip stop here as well, so it's usually worth getting a sandwich and having a good road trip.
Right. We've not got that over here. That sounds fabulous. Is that like a fast food sort of place, is it?
I don't even know how to explain it to you. It's just a weird, fantastical, strange, like would only ever be found in America kind of place, I think.
Yeah, I'm imagining sort of Twin Peaks diner, cherry pie and that sort of thing.
Pretty much.
Very nice, very nice. And as all your family, do they all have an interest in meteorology, or do they do all different things?
Lord, no. I grew up in the in the Bible Belt. Really, Tennessee's very much, especially rural Tennessee. Very much Bible Belt, and this kind of intertwines with my introduction into weather. But really, I guess I'm had a weird fascination with storms, but it was mostly kind of came from fear when I was younger, and I think thinking about it now, I really just wanted an explanation for storms when I was a younger child, and kind of watching the storms roll in the southeast, having this fear of them. But the only thing that was ever really told to me, as a kid was, oh, well, God's bowling, or God's just angry. And to me, that was never the answer that I needed or that I wanted. And in fact, I think it made me more scared, just kind of putting that literal fear of God into you, of like, oh, God's just angry. God's just going to have this tornado come down on earth. And, which is very scary, I think, when you're a child. And so, no, there was never any of that in my family. It was more so just all based out of my own fear that I really got intertwined with storms and wanting to learn more about them. And it was only as an adult that I really kind of took that power into my own hands and taught myself meteorology and learned how to sort of overcome that fear. Right. Largely through my channel as well. So I think just me as a kid wanting to have that explanation, wanting that science and that understanding of it, and never really getting that answer. Yeah,
it's your channel is fantastic because it really, it makes quite complicated concepts very easy to understand. And I think your friend actually posted this meme the other day which really made me laugh, which was I think it was two people trying to hug or someone trying to get out of a door, and it said me, and they were trying to get to meteorology, and math was stopping them.
Oh, geez, yeah.
And I was like, that's, I'm talking a good game with storms, but when it actually gets into the nuts and bolts, it's like pretty intense maths to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and I have so much respect I went to school for English, and I never have felt, and this is a deep personal thought, I've never felt I was smart enough to pursue anything in STEM. And I guess I largely had never felt good enough, or that I was capable enough of understanding the complexities of meteorology. And not to say that I fully do now. There are so many concepts I've still yet to learn, but I think there's something so powerful in being able to take that into your own hands, and whether or not you go to school for them, to learn about the things that you really enjoy, however in depth you want to take it. And meteorology is something that I feel so fortunate to have just been able to self-study, and I feel really thankful for the other people in the community that have taught me so much about meteorology that I wouldn't have otherwise known.
Yeah.
And it's a really, it's so fascinating. There's always more to learn, and there's always people out there who are willing to share that knowledge with you, which is so great.
And I was going to ask if you feel, since you've started the channel, or you noticed a change in the storm community, how obviously we're now got so much technology at our fingertips, and I'm, it's really interesting looking back at your videos and how you edit them, and looking back at some of that footage of, what was I watching the other day, the Wichita Andover 1991 tornado, and those, I was trying to think when I first saw that footage, and it must have been on TV, World's Worst Weather or something like that when I was growing up.
Yeah.
But I remember those two bits of footage quite distinctly. One, the tornado battling through McConnell Airport, and until I'd listened to your video, I had no idea that there was also these planes holding nukes, in the military base, which is like almost like Michael Bay style cinema in a way. It's like, is it gonna? Oh my goodness! So that was absolutely fascinating to hear about. And then the Earl Evans footage you could just see the massive wedge and the white wooden houses in front of it, and it's, I don't know. There's no question here. It's just something about that image. It's this black monster, that's just impenetrable. You can't see what's going on inside of it, but it's coming.
Yeah, I think what's so cool now is, like, if you think about how rare that sort of footage, I think the Andover 91 was one of the first real times that there was recorded, like a close-up recorded instance of like violent damage happening in real time. And that was, obviously that's so incredibly rare for that to have been recorded at the time. But if you think about now in 2024, there's so many chasers, and the community is so big as it's evolving. People are getting that kind of footage all the time. And I think my favorite juxtaposition to that 91 Andover footage was Reed Timmer got footage in the same place, Andover, Kansas, in 2023, I think, I think it was a drone shot of a tornado going through Andover. It ended up being like an EF3, I believe. But it was the most, same thing, like, a couple decades later, beautiful, intricate footage of this multiple vortices tornado going through Andover. And to me, it was just so, I don't know, symbolic of how much the community's changing and growing, to be able to see that kind of side-by-side footage decades later in the same place. And I don't know, it's kind of a full circle moment to me, just how far we're kind of coming as a community. And
also just the amount of CCTV cameras there are around now. And I can't remember where the footage was from, but it was shot around inside of a school, and also the outside of the school as well. And that's, you see the tornado coming through and just lift up this car, and you really see the hook of the wind coming through, and really scary, and really like you can see the power of it.
Yeah. Oh, you had mentioned also tornado prediction models, which I think is a whole other conversation, which I think is so fascinating. But I think that's probably one of the bigger differences in the community now, outside of how big chasing has gotten recently. The emergence of these tornado prediction models that are really rapidly growing and only exponentially going to continue to grow. But I feel like we're really at the precipice of being able to have way better tornado prediction, getting warnings out maybe an hour or more in advance for people. So I feel like we're really in this historical point, kind of watching that happen in real time. And I think I feel really lucky to be sort of a part of that shift happening.
I know I've heard about you talk about one particular incident where, really sort of a formative incident. Was that particular incident for you, a kind of spark for saying, right, I need to really understand what's going on here?
I think my real freak interest in especially the social science with tornadoes, I mean, it's a bunch of different things. I had a tornado experience in 2016 that really kind of solidified my interest in storms. And the social science behind them, I was working a night shift, the crummiest night shift job you can imagine, in this factory setting.
Right.
And there was a tornado that came through at midnight.
Right.
And already having been scared of storms at the time, this was like, oh, I'm about to be squished like a bug by these machines, these giant machines that are in here. And it was really scary. It was an experience that certainly stuck with me. And after that, getting more into events, the more I read and the more I sort of talked to people and read comments online, I just realized that there's so much social science that needs to be talked about with these events.
Yeah.
I guess it's been a lot of factors, but the combination of my own personal experience and fear, and then just the confirmation of starting my channel and realizing that a lot of people really like to talk about the social science and fears and things behind tornadoes. I think that's kind of the driving force for me.
What I found remarkable on your channel is there's not one negative comment. That's what I heard of in YouTube. Not that I'm saying that there would be. There obviously wouldn't be. But, it's all goodwill to you and how well you present the videos. And I read something, you were apologising for being, pun intended, I guess, long-winded. And then everyone was going, no, more long-winded. We want it long-winded. We want the detail.
I don't get it. When I started making my videos, because, I think there's like a renaissance of people really liking long-form content now, of documentaries and things. I'm certainly one of those people myself, but I can't understand why people would want to listen to something as hyper-specific as like societal impacts of tornadoes. It's hilarious to me, but I remember after I made I think it was my second video, I'd worn like a pink top. This is so off topic, but it's funny to me. I was wearing like a pink top, and this one person was so mad at me in the comments for having worn pink to talk about death. And I just thought that was like the funniest thing, and it actually kind of hurt my feelings at first. So I was like, maybe that's a valid criticism. And I've always sort of had the moral dilemma of feeling that whether or not it's appropriate for me to be talking about other people's trauma or death on my channel and me sharing their stories, I've always felt that was a valid criticism, one that I really genuinely do think about a lot. But the pink wearing thing really gets me. I think is funny.
I think you're incredibly respectful of that, and you tread that line very, very, very carefully.
Oh, thank
you. And you never show anything graphic, even when the Gerald Texas video you did about and again, this is totally mind blowing for me, listening to you talk about a tornado that size, which stops essentially and churns up the ground, and and I don't know, I guess to most people they've got a kind of Hollywood idea, and we can get onto Hollywood depictions of tornadoes later, of what a tornado does, if it when it hits. And until that point I was maybe in that camp where I thought, it maybe throws you or something hits you. But to hear about, without getting into the graphics about it, animals, how animals were hurt, and what happened to the victims in there, that was really, totally eye-opening. But you did that incredibly well and very, very delicately. So I think it's the long form content, it's the way you present it, the sort of almost ASMR way you present it. And then I saw you brandishing a copy of that Significant Tornadoes book the other day, and I was like,
what a book.
Oh my goodness. And then I went on Amazon, and there's one on there for like $2,000, and I was like, I can't justify it.
Yeah. No, I think I spent $150 on mine. It was like a new published version, but the old ones you are hard pressed to come by the old ones. And Thomas Grzouli's is, I mean, he's still working on the books and stuff, but I mean, I can only imagine how long it takes for him to publish these books. And backtracking really quick, because my pea brain has to get this thought out. Yeah. On the note of graphic things, I really do want to have a discussion about it in a video. I haven't found the best way to do it because there's so much to talk about in terms of the kinds of morbid detail, the realities really of the statistics involving tornado fatalities. It's a hard discussion. And in my opinion, it's one that really needs to be had because people need to know more about it. And statistically, it really is the more graphic head and neck injuries that are the killers of tornadoes. Yeah. And I think there's a way to do it respectfully, but I want it to be based in statistics and not, I don't know how to say this. I don't want it to be a person's personal story for me to tell. I'd rather it be based in a study or a statistic that I can share. But there's definitely a conversation to be had there, certainly. And I want to do it in its own presentation. I've just yet to find the time, I guess, and space to do it.
I think you're totally right. I think it's totally eye-opening and from an educational point of view to really convey. I mean, you can see the power of some tornadoes, but to convey that and because the one I was watching earlier, and I'm probably pronouncing the name incorrectly of the town, Roanoke was it? Where
that's right. Yeah, Roanoke.
The factory owner had experienced a tornado before.
Yeah, and he saved all those lives.
Yeah, and had built in these reinforced bathrooms where people could get to. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a definitely worthwhile from a kind of educational point of view, definitely.
Yeah, it definitely is. I feel like this community is, I'd like to think it is growing a lot, and I've noticed a lot of people are more weather aware, but I can't assume from my perspective and my experience that everyone else is weather aware and aware of statistically what the greatest risk to them is. I have to assume that people don't care and aren't interested in this. And those are always the people that don't take warning seriously and end up getting themselves hurt or killed. So I think it's important as a community for those of us who are interested in weather, we have to realize that a lot of people don't care about this stuff, which is why it's important for us to talk about it more openly and share it with other people and friends and family and whoever else, just so they can be more aware. I guess that's really the whole main point, to make other people aware.
So when did Two Storms come about then? What's made that come about? Because I need to buy some merchandise basically.
Two Storms I feel like has always been there. It was just without a name. I mean, I always knew I wanted to have a brand of sorts, but I never wanted to feel like I was just selling merch. Like, to me, that was kind of like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess, but yeah, I knew I wanted there to be something more, and for there to really be an outlet for not only myself, but for other people to know that there are mental health resources out there, and to really talk about mental health specifically through the lens of natural disaster. I just feel like there's a lot of people who not only have a fear of weather and storms, like myself, who have that storm anxiety, but there's also a lot of people who have trauma and different PTSDs from natural disasters that really honestly is not talked about very much. If at all. There's so much focus on let's say a hurricane hits in Florida. There's a lot of really intense media coverage right after. Let's ogle at it. Let's look at it. Let's look at the impact of the storms. But you never really hear the discussions about the kinds of long-term societal impacts.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Impacts. I think you identified it in one video where it's like, it might be the news for a couple of days, but that's a generational thing that people have got to deal with.
It is. And even in my instance where I wasn't really impacted physically in any sort of way by the tornado I experienced, I still have issues with storm anxiety. And there's so many other people who have that same issue. And so Two Storms was really a way to just talk about that and show people that there was an outlet for a discussion and a space for mental health awareness within, the lens of natural disasters. And I think it finally just sort of manifested itself last year. I've been in a really raw place personally for the past year, and starting Two Storms was kind of a big leap of faith for me. And it was really just born from the genuine desire to help other people like myself, and have an opportunity to give back to charity. So, I mean, I think it was always there. It just didn't have the name, and it kind of was just popped into my head one day and kind of rolled from there.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, as well as all that good stuff. The designs just look really cool. So, you know.
I've got new designs coming. I'm so excited. I think the worst part, and I'm sure you really relate to this, is that I'm so horrifically picky about design to my own detriment, or, about my own work. And I'm not a graphic designer. So I'm like trying to do something. I'm like, oh, it looks like shit. I hate it. And it takes me so long to actually like what I'm doing.
No, it's fabulous. And I'm sure they are shifting like hotcakes. I mean, do you think storms in general, and I'm sure there are definitely statistics there that I've not read, do you think storms in the US are overall getting stronger? And do you think we need to worry about, there's obviously a big discussion. I know you've done a video about a possible F6 or EF6.
Yeah.
So, do you think we need to start rethinking the enhanced Fujita scale? And from your experience, do you think tornadoes are getting more frequent and stronger?
I think, I always like to preface by letting people know that I'm not scientifically qualified to answer these questions, but I think there's a lot of debate about whether or not tornadoes and storms are getting stronger, or whether natural disasters are getting more frequent. I think time will definitely tell within the next decade or two, though I do definitely think it's within the realm of possibility. But one sort of discourse that I do want to note that I think is really interesting is the idea that Tornado Alley is shifting more east. Have you heard about that?
No, I haven't. No, because I know like Tennessee, that's in Dixie Alley, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, and I guess Dixie Alley has always been there as well, but I think it's interesting. There's a lot of people, and these are like respectable people within meteorology who are kind of noting that, hey, maybe the idea is more that Tornado Alley is still there, it still exists, but the stronger, more intense, or I guess more active areas are kind of looking to be more east. And again, that's something we'll have to wait to see where science backs that up. But I mean, to be fair, we have seen a lot of violent tornadoes, like more in the Ohio, Tennessee Valley, Dixie Alley area. And then if you think about the amount of like really intense nocturnal tornadoes we've had too, I think is really interesting as well. As far as the Fujita scale is interesting, because I think what I love about the conversation about the Fujita scale is that there's this almost collective understanding by everybody that the Fujita scale isn't the best method of accurately reflecting tornado intensity. Right. But it is a great science, and it's executed very well by the wind engineers and by the experts who use it. It's a damage-based scale, but it's not a tornado strength scale. And of course, there's a correlation between tornado strength and the damage it causes. But then if you look at some of the tornadoes that are happening out in open fields that may have 200 plus mile an hour winds, they're going to get an EF1 or 2 rating because they're not hitting anything.
Right, yes.
So I think the conversation of reimagining the Fujita scale is an interesting one, because we're sort of at this intersection where we cannot have a better scale and system until we have the better technology to fully understand the intricacies of tornadoes on the inside. But I mean, that's what's so fascinating and wonderful about the kind of work that Dr. Reed Timmer does, for example. He's a madman out there launching probes into tornadoes with the Dominator team. So, we're at that intersection where we can't really progress until we have more of that.
I saw a wonderful video of Reed. Maybe it was from back in the day where a girl he was dating had texted him and said, there's no future for this because you're married to Mother Nature. And he was like, yeah, there's a baby in the way and it's a supercell over Arkansas. I was like, really
you have to really respect. I mean, there's nobody out there like him. He is just so married to his craft. It is like you probably would never meet anybody more insane about their craft than him. And it's so respectable, Yeah. I think it's so cool.
I think that's right. I think he's done a lot for people's interest in extreme meteorology and storm chase. And I remember that show, Storm Chaser show, him and Josh Worman and all those guys, and that was really, really inspiring to me when I was growing up.
They need to do a study about kind of the psychological impact of Reed Timmer on the storm chasing community. Yeah. How many people he's inspired. And in fact, I mean, have you seen the new trailer for the Twisters movie with Glenn Powell?
We need to talk about this, but yes, carry on. Carry on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's so Reed Timmer coded that yes. I think it's hilarious.
Well, have you read? Because I didn't know so much to say about this Twister film. Firstly, because I imagine you're a big fan. I know you are a big fan of the first one, and it's and I am as well. And again, it's one of those kind of pivotal moments of watching that film, and kind of consolidating an interest in storm chasing. But this one, firstly, it's been directed by Lee Isaac Chung, who his previous film was Minari, which was a beautiful. Did he win the Oscar? Film about him growing up and his family, and really quiet sort of drama. Mm-hmm. So I was like, wow, that's an unusual choice for the director of this. And then
I wonder where the inspiration came for him just all of a sudden, like maybe that.
Yeah, or it's like, right, Lee, you can either do a Marvel film or we've got Twisters here. What do you want? And maybe he's a massive fan. You never know. But also I read the other day that the concept behind the thing is that they're trying to, and he said it in the trailer, doesn't he? We're finding a way to kill a tornado, and I think that's the idea. They're trying to find a way to send in a drone that's going to disperse a tornado, and I was like, that's quite interesting in a way, but it's like we're totally science fiction.
Is that the plot they're going with?
I think so.
Oh God.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, that's odd, but it also gives me. I just thought of the amount of people that have wanted them to put in some kind of bomb or nuclear bomb or atomic, I don't know what, in a hurricane to see if it'll match the energy.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe it's on a big comment like Glenn Powell's character is basically, a MAGA person, and he's like, we just need a nuke. Nuke that MF.
Just blow it up. That's so American, though. I mean, can you imagine the rest of the world watching this? They're like typical American.
No, I thought that's. Well, it's good. I'm glad it's not just a rerun of the first one. But I mean, I would have watched that anyway. But I know there was a lot of people saying, the first second of the trailer is people trying to hide under an underpass. And then the storm community go, don't do that. That's bad. Don't do that.
Yeah. Well, the amount of people that weren't, I think that's like the whole, and I guess we'll have to see, but the amount of people who were triggered in the community when it was clearly like a call to showing why underpasses aren't safe. The guy even looks like he's giving his final goodbye as he goes to shelter under the overpass. So I'm like, well, just let's wait to see the movie. I'm sure he's going to be like the example of why you don't, shelter under. I can't imagine they would, maybe I'm wrong, but I can't imagine they would put that in the film outside of it being the cautionary tale.
No, well,
I guess.
I mean, you would hope that they've had some meteorological advisors on the thing. They're not just
I think they have for sure.
Yeah.
And I think they're using some storm chaser footage. I know Pecos Hank was one that I want to say that they're using. No, maybe that was for the Supercell film. But I can imagine they probably consulted experts because they did for the original Twister as well.
Yeah, and it looks like a lot of the filmic language from this film is taken directly from shows like Storm Chasers, like the shots inside the car, and that really looks like when Reed does a video, and he's doing his brilliant shouting. So no, I'm excited. I'm excited to see that, because any kind of tornado film that comes up, I was mildly disappointed by Into the Storm, and we don't need to talk about Sharknado and.
Well, I love Glenn Powell as the casting. I think he's the perfect cast for possibly the egomaniac. Well, I don't know, maybe he won't be an egomaniac, but I think he'll probably really capture the dynamics of the classic storm chaser out there, I guess.
Yes, no, it's very excited. And just before we get on to some X-Files chat, was there any other kind of tornado media when you were kind of growing up that you saw and that was influential to you, and that you thought, oh, that's and later on down, in life you've thought that's actually a pretty good depiction of
Well, I think,
the twisters?
I think a lot of the, not necessarily Hollywood, I would argue there really hasn't been that much tornado or storm media like in mainstream media, but I mean, I think for myself and honestly for like most of the other people in this community who were interested in weather, the super outbreak and the footage that came from 2011 as a whole, like Joplin, and the 2011 footage, that is so Hollywood coded in and of itself. It's such an unbelievable story, the entire outbreak, the amount of footage that came out of there, and that all of that is just, there's so much to dive into there. You wouldn't even need any other movies. I mean, there's so much media there, and it's fascinating, it's horrifying, and it's everything you would ever need. So I think the 2011 year for me, I was in high school at the time. I graduated 2013. So, I mean, that was another huge influence for me to be interested in weather, and for so many other people as well. It was such a big outbreak that I think it really was a turning point outside of like the Twisters movie for a lot of people to be intrigued by just how violent, these outbreaks can be.
Really interesting, yeah. I'm going to do an awkward segue into the X-Files here by saying that this episode of the X-Files we're going to talk about, which is season 2, episode 12, Aubrey, is directed by Rob Bowman. And the thing that got him interested in filmmaking was the film Wizard of Oz. So there's the tenuous segue. Again, thank you so much for chatting to me and for watching the show. And you said you'd never seen the X-Files.
I'm brand new to X-Files. I'm so happy to be introduced to something new, because I cannot believe, I feel like embarrassed to be like, no, I've never seen it, because it was so impactful. It's such a big show. I cannot believe I'd never watched it before. Well,
it's funny. It has been great actually rewatching these shows back and seeing how influential, like you say, it is on popular culture. In particular this episode, and I realised it was good to rewatch it a couple of times, because I remember it from the first time I watched it through, and then I watched it again a couple of weeks back, and then I've just watched it again now. But this particular episode does benefit from a rewatch, because there is a twist at the end, and I realised when I sent it to you, it's actually quite a heavy episode, this, isn't it?
It is, but I didn't mind. I mean, I've always kind of liked dark stuff anyways, and I, being from rural Tennessee, I do like some spirits and supernatural things. So it was a really good one, and I enjoyed it. I did like the plot twist as well.
So yeah, the episode is essentially, it starts with kind of a mid-investigation, police investigation. Someone's been killed in quite a graphic way. Someone's always been... It's always graphic if you kill somebody, isn't it? We'll get on to what that is in a minute. And we're introducing these two detectives, a man and a woman. The man's played by Terry O'Quinn, who genre fans might know as the stepfather from the Stepfather horror films. And the female detective is played by an actor called Deborah Strang. She's absolutely fantastic. We realise that they're having an affair and that she's pregnant, and that's quite an integral part of the story, comes to play later on as well. He says, let's meet in a motel later on, but she's going to this hotel, and then she has a kind of, is it a flashback? We're moved to a different place, which is the back of the truck with this female detective, and then she's in this field digging something up, and we realise that she's digging up a corpse, and there's a police badge there or an FBI badge, and then the credits start. So I felt like it was a really, really good episode, this, and a lot to it, and a lot going on a lot of levels. And, Mulder gets in a tasteless joke, as it is wont about her character being called BJ. And I've said many times on the podcast that we'll try and be sex positive on the podcast, but Mulder is quite a dirty young man in this, when he's not sat out watching dirty movies, or, he's making some off-colour jokes, but, we'll let him off. And then the story follows parallel investigation, basically, of there's a serial killer on the loose in the present time, and there's also like, where have these corpses come from? How would this policewoman possibly know that these corpses are in the middle of this field? And then alongside that, they're trying to keep this affair under wraps, and nice little bits between Mulder and Scully all the way through about their relationship. But was there anything that particularly stood out that you really, really liked or really, really didn't like in the episode?
Well, I took a lot of notes on it because, I mean, as a newcomer, I think there was a lot to note. So my first notes are that I love a redheaded woman to start off with. I love the Mulder-Scully dynamic, the conspiracy theorist and the skeptic.
Yes.
I also like that they made Scully, and this is all my like first impressions, but it seems they've made Scully the one who is fact-based, and I like that they made the fact-based, reality-based one Scully, rather than the sort of stereotypical woman portrayal at the time in media, which would have been the more emotional partner.
Totally.
I like in this episode that Scully is a lot more keen and intuitive about the woman. She immediately recognizes the affair and the pregnancy.
That was interesting, wasn't it? You felt like, because it's written by Sarah B. Charno, who then went on to write Tomb Raider, the Tomb Raider film with Angelina Jolie.
Oh.
So there is a bit like, I don't know, I felt like some of it was almost a bit, I don't know how to phrase it delicately, but it was almost like a studio had got involved and gone, let's have Scully talk about a female intuition. And from today's eyes, I was like, that's a bit, sticks in the throat a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And then Mulder, of course, is focusing on the more paranormal aspect of it. But, outside of... So I'm assuming X-Files has a lot of monsters or paranormal activity in general. Am I correct?
You are very correct in that assumption.
Okay.
So there's the aliens legacy business. I hate the aliens. Aliens are really boring to me. The monster of the week ones, which this one is always the more enjoyable.
Yeah. Okay. I heard about that with you talking about your last guest, and I was excited. I need to watch more. But I love that underneath, for this episode specifically, I love that underneath this, you kind of go through the whole episode thinking that there's something paranormal happening, but underneath the supernatural element that's displayed with sort of BJ's unexplained visions, you're kind of wondering what's going on. Underneath that, you have the scariest part, which is the truth of the matter, which is that human beings can be and are a lot of times really awful, scary monsters themselves. And sometimes that's because of genetic predisposition or mental disorder, or schizophrenia, or, PTSD, brain injuries, things like that. I mean, outside of paranormal things, human beings can be really awful and frightening themselves. No,
I totally love that about this episode, and another episodes like it where it's like you say, it's just human beings. And I remember that quote from Toby Hooper, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre director, and he was like, it's not monsters and ghoulies that worry me, it's other people scare me. So that's great. And it sort of reminds me of it. There's another episode coming up about it's like a funeral home worker who is a serial killer as well, and there's not a supernatural element to that, but it becomes about, in the episodes, it's not a spoiler to say, Scully does get abducted quite a few times. She gets abducted by aliens. She gets abducted in a heist, and it almost like the characters rallying against that. In that particular episode, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, it becomes about how all men in Scully's life are a potential threat.
Oh, wow.
And every man she looks at, be it Mulder, be it their boss Skinner, be it anybody she comes across, it could be a potential threat to her. And that's, I think it was quite... it's quite forward thinking in a way, X-Files, and how it tackles a lot of its issues.
Oh, that's so interesting. I mean, I kind of went on a bunch of tangents after I started writing my notes with it, because at the end you have BJ in prison, after everything's unfolded, you think she's sort of possessed, but she's got this sort of, I guess it's what would you say, like maybe a genetic predisposition or a genetic tendency to be violent? Or?
Mulder talks about that, doesn't he? This idea, this Jung's idea, the collective unconscious, and how like generational traumas passed down, and we know that's the thing. It's passed down from person to person, and he likens it to the fact that he likes eating sunflower seeds, and so does his dad. And he didn't always pick that up from, but that's where he's kind of got it from. But and it's sort of fascinating that she's pregnant as well. So is this lineage, is this trauma going to be passed on down to her? But she's you know, she's great. It's always the great acting that sells these shows, because it could be, if people came in chewing the scenery, it just wouldn't work. It'd be totally silly. But she's a fantastic actor, and she really does sell it.
Yeah, it was great. And the twist was, I mean, I had no idea what was happening the first half of the episode, and so it was intriguing to me. And then it took me to at the end where she's pregnant. You know, there's the question of what will happen with the child, and then I started thinking about another horrifying yet very real thing of postpartum psychosis, which I've been hearing a lot of stories about lately, and just how terrifying that is. Have you, by chance, ever read The Yellow Wallpaper?
Yes, I have. Yeah, very thin book. Yeah, I have at some point in my life.
It took me back to that, and I know the episode isn't about postpartum depression or psychosis, but it kind of took me back there. I had read it for my undergrad studies and written about it, and just how very real some of these mental disorders and different things are, and how scary they can be for people. It's just, I don't know, the very real nature of it outside of anything that's paranormal or in the spirit realm.
No, totally. And there's another cat, like quite a famous character from the show called Dwayne Barry, and it's the thing with him is he keeps saying, I've been abducted by aliens, and it's, do we take him on face value, or he's very easily cast aside as, oh, you've got a mental illness, so we'll lock you away and then we don't have to listen to you talk about it. Yeah,
it's, I don't know, it's scary how often that happens in reality too. But I do want to watch some of the episodes about aliens or the monsters. I think that would be really fun. I'm not totally based in reality myself. I would be inclined to believe in aliens myself, so I think it'd be fun to explore those episodes.
Oh, great. Yes, you've got a lot of it to go at, because there's 218 episodes, so enjoy.
Oh, great.
Enjoy getting into that. But yeah, it gets it, like I say, it embraces changing technology and changing cinematic styles since when it started, mid-90s, really well. So whatever was zeitgeist at the time, let's say that TV show Cops, or what was big in American TV culture, you get episodes which kind of factor into that. And there is an episode, I don't know what season it is, where you end up going on a documentary sort of journey with Mulder and Scully and these cops looking into a monster of the week, but it's all told in a documentary kind of style. So they really embrace that, and it's quite, some people moan about it not taking itself too seriously, but I quite like the ones where it kind of nods and winks and embraces a bit of comedy, because certainly the ones Vince Gilligan writes, before he gets on to making Breaking Bad, they're really fun and really good to get involved in, just like dipping in and out of if you don't want to get involved in the whole 5-year conspiracy of what the aliens are doing with that. Because there is, again, I saw another meme the other day where it's like the top half of it is Mulder going, there's aliens involved in this, Scully, definitely, and Scully's just like head in her hands on the bottom of it, like, oh, not again, quietly.
I wish they'd go ahead and just take over already. I mean, get it over with instead of waiting this whole time. I like it when shows take our biggest fears at the time and sort of bring them to life. I think, and I haven't watched a ton of this, but American Horror Story, I think, is a good example of kind of capturing a lot of our fears of sort of these dystopian things that are happening around us all the time now, and bringing those to life in a very scarily real way, the way that things are going now. So, but I enjoy that. I like being a little bit scared. So I think X-Files is going to be a good hyperfixation for me.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I think like you say, it does well because it went on so long to really try and reflect what was happening in American culture at the time. And I've not got to it yet, but I'm really interested to, see what happens post 9/11 and see how they reflected that, because I know there was a lot of people walked away from the show because it's like, we don't want this. We don't want a show that's saying the government is out to get it. We want the government to help us, and then the whole thing became about, it's not America that's the problem, it's everywhere else. So that's fascinating. And we've got a new series of it in development at the minute. Ryan Coogler's making it. So I'm excited to see how we, and if he does, reflect what's going on in America at the moment, because That's never a dull moment in America, is it?
No, you're not kidding. But as a filmmaker yourself, I'm sure you're very well aware. I mean, I was just watching a video game documentary the other day, and it was talking about how much media and perceptions changed right after 9/11, and how a lot of filmmakers were not willing to make certain things anymore, not willing to even talk about or touch on specific episodes or things just out of fear. I mean, projects that were half done were scrapped, and
right.
I think that's so interesting to think about how much that culturally changed media at the time.
No, totally. I'm sure it did, and I'm sure studios are thinking, how are we going to sell this? Are we going to be able, in monetary terms? And they're always thinking about, can I sell this to China? Can I sell this around the world?
Yeah.
And lots of different conversations going on about what gets cut out of a film because the censors in other countries aren't going to go along with it. So
it was a Japanese video game, and they were making the Dino Crisis video game. They were talking about making it in a post-apocalyptic America, but they were in development during 2000 and 2001, so they were about halfway done with this new game, and they scrapped it because obviously America is a huge market for them, and they were like, well, we can't do a post-apocalyptic America now. I mean, it's just not on the table. So I mean, it's fascinating to think about how much that probably happened at the time.
Yeah. Dino Crisis, that takes me back.
Yeah.
I have to check that out.
I've been on my PlayStation 1 rewatching and replaying Kick lately. It's what I've been doing.
Yes. Have you So, I mean, aside from that, have you been? What have you been watching recently, and that you've liked, or what have you been reading, or anything that you've kind of come across? And great to hear some games recommendations as well.
Yeah, I'm not ashamed to say at all that I've been very much in my fantasy. I mean, I've always really enjoyed the fantasy genre, but I've been reading this really viral book series called A Court of Thorns and Roses. Very fairy, fantastical, whimsical, just wonderful book series, and that goes along with Skyrim. I always usually play, and that's pretty much it. I admittedly, I don't watch a ton of other media. I've just been reading and playing video games sometimes, but to be honest, my when I do my videos, they're so kind of all-consuming that when I am done looking at my computer, I just want to go outside. And as a creative yourself, I'm sure you probably relate to just needing kind of a mental break from doing your work and your craft. It's just kind of draining a little bit sometimes, and you need
but I totally
kind of
hear
escape.
that. You just get totally, I'll do another 10 minutes, and then that becomes half an hour, that becomes an hour, and you don't want to leave it until it's done. I struggle with that myself, actually.
Yeah, I think the ebbs and flows of creativity can be really intense, and it's something that I've definitely had to learn how to ride out the past couple years just in doing. And I mean, I've only been doing this for a couple years, so I think I'm still very new, but I think the one thing that I'm happy to be learning is how to ride out those ebbs and flows. And something that's really important to me is not forcing the creativity, and I really respect that. When I'm in a period of not being productive, I feel like I really need to respect that and to not try to force it, because it's not going to happen, and then that's usually followed by an intense bout of creativity, and so it goes.
How do you go about the actual process of creating the videos then? Do you write out a script and then hone that, and is it a set process each time, or does it change?
Yeah, it's been a set process since I started, and I would like to change it up because I feel like I'm doing the same thing over and over, and I want to challenge myself more. But typically I'll either read my Significant Tornadoes book and try to find something that piques my interest. Sometimes I'll watch a video or see someone tweet about, I'll hear a quote that someone's talked about from a victim, or there's so many different things. And then I'll read about it, decide if it's something I want to talk about. If I try to go for things that have more societal impact than just crazy damage or whatever else. But or ones that events that have controversy. I like talking about controversial events. And then I'll write out a script and then just film it like normal and kind of go back and edit it. But I mean, I have such a pea brain sometimes when it comes to this stuff that whole part in and of itself takes me a month to do. So
yes, yeah. No, it's well, whatever it is you're doing, it's working, because people really get so much, including myself, from your video. So, long may it continue.
Well, thank you.
Believe Me is written and edited by me, Chris Boyd, with production support from Steve Marshall. The music is by Johnny Boyle, and our logo is by Russ Brown. If you like the show, please do hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you out there next time.